Thanks, Debbie, for that lovely introduction. I hope you're all enjoying the day so far. Hi, everybody. How are you? Hope you're all okay and you're enjoying all these lovely tutorials. It's been fab, hasn't it? A lovely day yesterday of lots and lots of paper crafting and all sorts of things. And then today we've got lots and lots of sewing and textiles, which is fabulous. We're going to be doing some patchwork and quilting today. And I'm going to be showing you two really simple blocks that kind of go together to make a quilt that looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. This is perfect for a beginner, absolute perfect for a beginner. So if you've never had a go at quilting, never had a go at patchwork before, always wanted to, this is a really nice little block to start with. If you're more experienced and you've done it before, you can play around, and I'm going to show you that a bit later, play around and make it different, okay? So please do join in. Ask me some questions. I'm going to be replying later on, okay? So I will reply after the demo. So, but ask lots and lots of questions. I'll go back on and I'll read them and answer any questions or queries you've got. Join in the fun. You can join in with the hashtag CCS live. I couldn't say that then. And if you want to ask me a question, please just tag me in that. Tag in White Gecko Craft Lounge, okay? And I will go back on afterwards and we can chat away. But it's fab when we get that feedback from you guys. So please just, if nothing else, just say hello. Let me know you're out there. So I'm going to be showing you this block today. We've called it a Scrap Happy 4-patch because it is brilliant for using up little scraps of fabric. It's brilliant for using up. We've all got them. I've got them. All my friends who've sewers and all have got them. You know, we've got those boxes and boxes of little bits of fabric that are not big enough for a main project, but we don't really want to get rid of. We don't want to put them into landfill. You know, we want to try and be environmentally friendly, and we want to use them up somehow. So this block, this quilt, so I've put some of the blocks together. I've put 6 blocks together here, okay, just to make a little sample so that you guys can see what you can do with it. And this is just one way that you can play around with the blocks, okay? There are other versions and we will show you that later on, okay? But you can absolutely just use all your little tiny bits of scrap. You can use, you know, I like the fact that you can go back and look at a project and go, oh, I used that one in that dress, or I used that one in that quilt, you know, or I used this one to make a bag for my mum or my friend or something. So it's a way of keeping all that, those little memories and stuff of fabrics, because, you know, we all have fabrics we love, we don't want to get rid of. So you can absolutely use scraps, no problem with that at all, but you could also use pre-cuts. These are really good. You know, if you've got those little mini charm packs, the little 2.5-inch squares, and you're not sure what to do with them, this project works really well with that. You could use pre-cuts, you could use something like a charm pack or a layer cake, and you can cut those down into the sizes really nice and easily, and it gives you a much more unified look because it's all from the same design range. So rather than it being sort of bright and scrappy like this one, you end up, actually I'll show you this one, you end up with something that is, this is just one block all made from a charm pack, and it gives a much more unified, a sort of more cohesive look to the quilt because it's all in the same design range, okay? I've also played around with my background fabric with this. Rather than having my background fabric as the main piece and then an accent colour, I've switched it around. I've used a pink as my background and then a white as my accent, where in this block, which is the one we're actually going to do, I've used a cream as my background and I've used this bright cobalt blue as my accent. Okay, so you can play with this, absolutely. You can make it as bright and scrappy as you want, or you could make it as coordinated as you want. It's entirely up to you, okay? It's really simple. There are 2 very simple blocks, and I'm going to take you through both of them, okay? We're going to start by making a little 4-patch, which is something a lot of beginner quilters start on. It's a nice, easy little thing to do. There's a couple of little tricks that I'm going to show you as well. And I've raided I've already cut some, but I've raided my scrap bucket and I've pulled out all sorts of lovely little bits of fabric. I've got quite a lot of solids here, actually. It doesn't have to be solids. You can have lots and lots of pattern, entirely up to you, okay? First thing you want to do is give them a little press, all right? I do find that if you press it first and just give them a bit of a starch as well. So I'm just going to give them a quick blast of starch just to help with the cutting. What starch does, it just holds the fibres in place, and that allows you to get more, you know, precise cutting. So I quite like the June Taylor Starch Savvy. It doesn't leave any residue or anything, and I do recommend that one actually. It's lovely. There's also one that we do called Best Press, which is really, really good as well. Smells amazing, that one. But you would just iron all your little scraps up, okay? You can see I've got little tiny ones, I've got slightly bigger ones, anything that I can get a 2.5 inch square out of, because that's what we're going to be cutting, okay? So I'm going to line these up, and for quickness, you can absolutely stack your fabrics. So I'm going to stack these up like this, okay? I'll grab my ruler. Now I'm right-handed, so this is obviously going to be the wrong way round for you guys at the moment, but I can't cut left-handed, so I can't do it facing you. So the first thing I'm going to do is just trim up this edge here, okay? I just want a nice straight edge to start with. So I'm just going to take off just a smidgen, just a little squidgy bit off the end like that, okay? I'm just going to get rid of those. Now I need my straight edge to be on the left-hand side because I've obviously got the rotary cutter in my right. So I'm going to flip this round like this, and I've got that nice straight edge there. We're going to line my 2.5 inch line on my ruler. So hopefully you guys can see this. So it's 1, 2, and there's my 1/2 inch line there. I'm going to line that up on that cut edge that I've just trimmed off, okay? And then I want to cut up into this one along the edge of the ruler like that, all right? So fingers out of the way, make sure obviously rotary blades are incredibly sharp, be careful with them, you know, fingers out of the way and cut up, okay? Make sure you put your rotary blade down as well afterwards. And then I'm just going to take off this little bit here because I don't need that bit. I can go back in the scrap bucket. All right. Now I also want to trim up this edge here, okay? So because I want to get nice accurate cutting. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to line one of my horizontals along that straight edge that I've just cut, because then I can cut down here and we know that this is going to be straight. If that's straight along there, this has got to be straight here. It's a right angle. It's all that maths that we never said we'd use, and we actually do use now, trigonometry and geometry and all sorts. And then I want to move this one over to my left-hand side, like that. Okay, and now I can start cutting my 2.5 inch squares. Now, a little trick of doing this quickly without moving the fabric, because the more you move the fabric, the less precise your cutting can be, because it's stretching and moving and stuff. So I know if I have a little measure here, I can see that I can easily get a 2.5, and then I can get another set of 2.5s out. So 2.5 and 2.5 is 5. So I'm going to line my 5 inch line right down the edge there that I just trimmed off. So I've got that lined up with the fabric there. And then I've got my horizontal line across the top like that. Okay, so I know that when I cut this one, that's going to be straight. And then rather than move the fabric, I can just move my ruler along, and now I can put my 2.5 inch line along that left-hand edge like that and chop down there. Okay, and you've got, without moving the fabric too much, you've got little 2.5 inch squares for each block. So for one block that's one block, okay, the one I showed you earlier, okay, that one. For each block you need 32 2.5 inch squares, okay, in random scrappy. If you're going to make more than one block, if you're going to make a quilt or something, I mean, if you're just going to do one block and maybe make it into a cushion, that's all you need is 32 2.5 inch squares. If you're going to make lots, I would suggest cut in lots, okay? Cut lots now, get all the cutting out of the way so that you could just get on with the sewing bit, all right? So I would cut lots and lots and lots of blocks of little squares, okay, which I've done already. Obviously for this one, there was a big pile. You will also need as well, for each block, you're going to need 8 4.5 inch squares in a background fabric. So this is a cream, I've used in a mode of grunge here. And then you want 16 2.5 inch squares, all in the same colour of an accent fabric, okay? Again, I'll show you another version later on, okay, where you don't use an accent fabric, you can use all scraps. But if you want this sort of very strong sort of lattice, look behind your blocks, you go with an accent colour, okay? So that's basically all the cutting you would need to do. I've just realised I've got a little tiny dog ear on there, so I'm going to do that. We're going to start with the 4 patches, okay? Incredibly simple little block, something that a lot of beginners start with because it's squares and it's simple straight line quilting, sewing rather, not quilting. You're going to choose 4 blocks. Okay, now I've already done some, but I'm going to show you how to chain piece and how to kind of get these together. So want to put them right sides together, so just pair them up. Try not to think too much about which fabrics are going with which. Okay, when you're doing scrappy, it works better, and a lot of people really struggle with this. They really do, because it gets a bit like, oh no, that colour doesn't go with that colour. But the scrappier you can be at this point, the better it actually works. Okay, because it gives a better look, because you don't start getting really, in fact, if you can put your squares into a bag and just pull them out and not think about it, don't look at it as you're pulling them out, you will get a better look to a scrappy quilt. If you struggle with that complete randomness, you could maybe do some, organise your scraps into colourway. So organise them into some blues, into greens, into oranges, into reds, etc. And make one block in all blues and one block in all greens, okay? A lot of people really struggle with the randomness of scrappy, but try not to overthink it too much, okay? So I'm just going to pop a couple more of these together, and then we're going to whip over to the sewing machine and we're going to start putting some of these together. Okay, so got my little iron ready to go in a second. We're going to just slide over to the sewing machine and have a little go. Okay, now I've got a 1/4 inch foot on, okay? Pop my 1/4 inch foot on. It does make life a little bit easier, particularly as we're going to chain piece these. You don't have to chain piece, and by chain piece I mean just keep sewing. Once you've got a little bit more experienced, chain piecing is brilliant because it makes things go. It makes the laborious, like boring straight line sewing go a bit quicker. Okay. Now we are going to chain piece these, but you don't have to. You can just sew each one by themselves. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we've got the stitch length on about 2.5. Okay, so just a nice normal stitch length. Grab my foot. And we're just going to sew right the way down, okay? Nothing complicated. I'm going to keep the edge of the fabric right on the edge of the little guide of the 1/4 inch foot. If you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, okay, I'm stopping with my needle down. Sorry, this is the chain piecing. I'm stopping with the needle down, and then I'm just going to slide the next one in, okay? I'm sliding the next one in, and away we go. And we're just going to, I don't pin. You can pin if you want to, but if it goes a bit skew-whiff, just, bring it back into line like that. Okay. You can pin them absolutely if you want to. I'm a bit lazy about pinning. I don't really enjoy pinning unless I absolutely have to. Spend more time taking the pins out. But I'm just sewing down 1/4 inch down this edge. Okay. There we go, all the way down. And this is something you could do with your kids or your grandkids if you've got somebody who a child who'd like to start sewing, because this is such an easy little block. This is absolutely something you could do the cutting for them, and then they could sit and sew these straight lines. Okay, so I've sewn all those together, and I would just keep going. If I'm making quilt size, I would just keep going and going and going and going and making lots and lots of pairs of blocks. Okay, so I'm just going to snip the thread in between, and then we're going to iron them out. There we go, like that. Cool. So, how are you enjoying the day so far? What have you liked? Did you watch yesterday? Did you watch what was going on? Do comment and let us know what you're thinking so far. Okay. So I'm going to press my seam. Sorry, let me just move this out of the way for you. So we're going to press the seam first just to set those stitches. That just helps the thread relax. Okay, and then I'm going to iron from the top. So I'm going to roll that out, okay, like that. And I'm going to do that for all of them. So again, nice and simple. So set the seam and then roll out. And we roll out from the front rather than the back. We iron from the front rather than the back as a quilter, because it stops you getting any little tucks. Now, sometimes if you iron from this side, like that, you can you see, just a tiny little pleat in the fabric, okay? It doesn't lie completely flat. So if we roll out from the front, you don't get that little pleat. And those little pleats, if you had that on all of your pieces, it would eventually affect the size of the blocks and things wouldn't go together properly, you know, because it's quite precise sometimes, the measurements. So there we go. I've now got lots of little pairs of 2. I'm going to put the 2s into 4 to make a 4 patch. So I've ironed them at the moment all the same way. So you can see the seam is going the same way. Okay. As quilters, we don't like to press seams open because it makes the seam a lot stronger to have that fabric behind it. It stabilizes the thread. And also it allows, when you're quilting, if you're stitching in the ditch or anything, you've got a little bit of fabric behind the ditch here, rather than just threads, okay, which can sort of weaken the seam. So we always press the side, and you always press the dark side where you can. Okay, doesn't really matter on a scrappy quilt, but I'll show you later when we're using the white and the blue, the cream and the blue, sorry. If you press towards the dark side, you can't see the seams. Okay, so we're going to pop these 2 together now. I'm just picking 2 random ones, and I want the seams to go opposite ways. So I've got one seam going this way, like that, and I want this seam to be going that way. So I'm going to flip this one upside down so the seams are going opposite ways. So when we put them together, like this, so I'm going to put them right sides together, I can nest that seam. So what I mean by that is when you kind of push them together, you can almost feel them click in, because you've got a little bit of raised bulk there, both sides. They kind of click in together almost. I mean, it's not an audible click, obviously, but you can kind of feel it with your fingers that they've butted right up against each other. This is a point I would use a pin, okay? And if you pin diagonally like that, okay, it holds the back one down while you're sewing so it doesn't all get mangled up. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to stitch right the way down that edge. And you would repeat this for all of your blocks. So we're going to go all the way down. Just being nice and steady. You know, take it slow. If you're you know, new to sewing or new to quilting, just take it a little bit steady, nice and slow. So again, I'm nesting that one up, making sure it's nice and tight in the centre. Pop a pin in. I'm just going to do a couple of these just so you can see, because I want to show you a little trick on the back which really helps with getting everything nice and flat. There we go. I'm not going to do all of them because I've already prepped a few, so I'm just going to do a couple just so you can see. When we take the pin out, we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to set the seam again. I'm going to set that seam and then roll it out. Okay, like that. So I didn't want to go, so I'm just going to flip it over and just give it an extra little press on the back. We're going to do something else in a second. Okay, so just set that seam and then just very gently roll that out. Okay, now I want to grab a pin, okay, and I'm hoping you guys can see this. I'm going to choose this one because it's slightly more contrasting fabrics. There is a couple of little stitches just here. Can you see where this thread is? I'm hoping you can get it. I'm going to take that thread out, just using a pin. I'm going to take that one out and I'm going to open that up and take it out that side as well. Okay, just by taking those 2 little stitches out, what happens is I can now open this out this way, and I'm just going to repress. So this seam is going to come this way and that seam's going to go that way. You've got a tiny little 4 patch of your seam here in the centre, so this is going this way. It's allowed the seams to sort of lie flat against each other. Okay, that really helps reduce the bulk in this centerpiece here, which, you know, when you're putting lots of squares together, does really help. It's just a tiny little thing, but it will help give you a nicer finish. It also helps give you a really nice perfect point in the center. Okay, all those points have come up together and they're really nice and close. If I keep this one to the side, I don't know, you're probably not going to feel it. You'd be able to feel it. So the difference between the bulk there, where it's all nice and flat, and this one doesn't lie quite as flat as this one because I didn't do that little piece. It doesn't matter if you don't do it. That's absolutely fine. But it's just one of those little tips that can help make your sewing a little bit more precise, a little bit more accurate. Okay. You would make lots and lots of little 4 patches. That's the first bit of the block done. It's as simple as that. It's 4 little squares together. Okay, so you are going to need 8 of those. Okay, you'd need 8 little 4 patches, which I've already done. Okay, I've done 8 already. Okay, so we're going to move over to the, I can't find my words today. We're going to move on to, not over, we're going to move on to the second part of the block, okay? This is where you need your 4.5 inch background squares, and you're going to need your accent fabrics, all right? You will need a washable marker of some sort. So because I'm using a very dark fabric, I've just got one of these chalk pencils. They're really, really good. They're brilliant for marking a dark fabric. If I was using a light fabric, I could use either a pencil, because you're not actually going to see it, but either a pencil or a water soluble pen or a heat erasable pen, okay? But I've got a chalk pencil because I've got black. Now I'm going to need to mark up 16 of these. I've already done some of them, okay? So I've already made some of the blocks over here. So you need 2 for each of these, all right? So we're going to just draw a little line. I've got a little ruler here somewhere. There it is. We're going to draw a little line diagonally across, all right? So while I'm doing this, please do ask me some questions. Please do go on and tell me what you think. Are you enjoying the day? How's it all going? So I'm just marking diagonally across. Who are you looking forward to watching? Let me know what you think, and if you've got any questions, because I will go back on afterwards and answer them all for you. Okay, so I'm going to go right the way across like this, all the way down, and I'm going to do a few of these. Okay, so sorry, it's a little bit laborious, this bit, isn't it? Probably should have done a lot of these before for you, but we're just going to go across like this. Okay, and what we want to do is we're going to do 8 altered squares, which again is a really, really simple little block, really nice and easy. So we're going to go right the way across, nearly there. Right, how many have I got there? So I've done 2. I need 12 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Another 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, it was. I can count. It's a miracle. I actually cut the right amount. There we go. Okay. We're definitely going to chain piece this, okay, for quickness. We're going to put these on, and I'm going to show you, and we're just going to whiz down. Oh, there we go. Whiz down and chain piece them. You could, rather than do a line, actually, you could iron a line in. If you're using like a really dark fabric and you haven't got a chalk pencil, you could absolutely iron a diagonal line into here. Okay, so I would put them like so, because they're going to go right sides together, you'd actually put them this way, so you'd have right side out, so put them wrong sides together, and you could, let me just quickly iron that one in for you, just so you can see. You can iron a crease in and you can stitch down that crease rather than drawing. Entirely, either method works absolutely fine, entirely up to you which way you want to do. So I'm going to take one of my background squares, and this is now facing you guys, okay? So in the top left corner, so this is your top left, we're going to put one of these squares, and can you see that the line, which way the line's going, like that? All right, and we're going to do that on all of our remaining squares. Okay, so you're going to do that on 8 of your background squares. So on the top corner of each one, we're going to put a little square like that. So we're going to whip back over to the sewing machine and whiz through those. Now, because we're going to be stitching on the line with this one, we're not going to be stitching either side of the line, we'll be stitching directly on the line. We don't need a 1/4 inch foot. You can leave it on if you want to. I'm going to take it off. I find it easier because sometimes the little guide piece can get caught, particularly as we're going across diagonals. So I'm going to put my normal foot on, and we're just going to whiz through these. And all I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to chain piece them, and I'm going to stitch directly on that drawn line. And you're basically stitching corner to corner, okay? Again, this is really simple line stitching. It's nothing complicated. I mean, the quilt behind me, that one, genuinely, I did that sample probably in an afternoon. Wasn't much more than that, probably about 3 or 4 hours. Once you've done your cutting takes longer than your sewing almost. Once you've done all your cutting, you can just whiz through the sewing, because you can do lots of one element before moving on to the next one, and then it's just the fun bit of deciding how you're going to put it all together. Okay, so I'm going to stitch down all of these. Won't be a sec. There we go, down this one. Okay, so don't forget to use the hashtag CCS Live or tag White Gecko Craft Lounge okay, and I will then be able to see your questions and I will answer as many as I can. Okay. Oh, that's it. I don't. That's the other side. I'm thinking I've run out of background squares. Oops. No, it's not there. The other side. So I'm having a proper silly moment there, and I was thinking, what have I done? So I'm just going to clip these apart, just quickly, like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put, and I'll just show you. We're going to put this one. So if we come back over here a second, we're going to put this one on the opposite corner. So this one was up here on your top left. This one is going down in your bottom right. And you really want to take note of the way that the seams are good, that line is going. Can you see it's running parallel to this one? Okay, you don't want to make the mistake of, you know, having it the wrong way or in the wrong corner. You want it parallel across that corner. So I'm going to do that now. Now, I mean, this block, this quilt that we're doing is a variation of a really traditional block. You know, this isn't something particularly new. It can be made to look very modern because we're using scrappy fabrics and bright fabrics and things, but look beautiful in sort of, you know, I actually think it would look really beautiful in sort of all done in reds and creams and things, you know, something quite traditional. But there is, I have written a pattern up. I've written up a pattern for my version, which will be available on our website from tomorrow. So that will be available on there. So if you, mind you can watch these videos back, can't you? They stay on the page, and you'll be able to watch them back anyway if you need any help, if you fancy having a go at this. But there is a pattern. I have done a pattern for it too. So all I'm doing is just, again, exactly the same as the first time, stitching down those drawn lines, and I'm chain piecing away. Like I said before, you don't have to chain piece. I just find it quicker. There we go. One last one to do, and then we can start putting the block together. Okay, so down this one, like that. Perfect. So we're just going to clip these apart. There we go. Oh, there we go. Did you all enjoy the first live that everybody did? I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. It was so much. I saw so many new techniques and so many new things to have a go at. I had lots of projects on the go now, and I'm like, oh, I want to have a go at that, and I want to have a go at this. So I'm just giving these just a quick press, just to hold it all down nice and flat, like that. Okay. And then we're going to do just like we did before. We're going to roll out these. Now we are going to cut this out off in a moment, the excess off. But I just like to make sure that I've done it properly first before I cut anything, because it's easy to unpick, but you can't sew the fabric back on properly, can you? So I'm just going to roll this out and make sure that that one's fine, which it is. Once you've done that, you can absolutely just cut off this excess. So you want to cut it off about 1/4 inch. Now you can measure it and do it with a rotary cutter, but actually I find it works just as well with a pair of scissors. And you want to cut about, you know, a scant 1/4 inch sort of thing, just as your seam allowance. Okay, so we're going to cut down on those like that, and there's your altered block. All right, and we're going to make, we need 8 of these in total. So I've done 2 already. I'm just going to chop these up, and then we can start putting the block together. We can start having some fun then. I can show you some variations of how you can put this together. So I'm just going to chop these off the edges, and then I'll iron them out. But like I said, if you're new to quilting, I would just do that little bit of ironing first. And oh, there we go, ironing first. I think I need to get my scissors sharpened. These are starting to get a bit blunt. Do that little bit of ironing first. Check that it's right before you chop this excess off. Okay. Now, you could absolutely keep these and use them in different scrappy projects. You could do mile-a-minute projects with these. You could do all sorts of little bits and pieces. So, you know, it depends on how little a scrap you keep. I don't tend to keep anything under about 2.5 inches now. I used to keep all sorts. I used to keep tiny, tiny little bits. But you can just get overrun with fabric. I am a little bit overrun with fabric, so I won't keep those ones. But if you've got patience, absolutely you could sew those together and do something with them. Right, just very quickly iron these out gently. Don't be too, you know, rough with them because you have got, that is a bias cut now, so you don't want to stretch it. So just a nice gentle press, not an iron. Okay, like that. I'm going to start putting these together. So these should now measure 4.5 inches. Okay, you can absolutely check your measurements if you wanted to. If you want to grab your ruler and square them up, but they should be pretty spot on. You should be fine. Okay, so I'm just, there we go. Last one. Like that. That one doesn't want to lie down. Let me just give that one a quick squirt of starch. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes they're a bit, you know, they misbehave a little bit and they don't want to lie as flat as you want them to. You see a little squirt of starch. It lies nice and flat. Okay, so let me move all my, don't need these now. So I'm going to, well, actually I'll just double check. I'll show you how to square up actually. I think we've got time. So just quickly show you how to square up. So you want these to be 4.5 inches. Okay, so you just want to make sure on your ruler, now you could use a 4.5 inch ruler, absolutely. Okay, you just want to make sure that your 4.5 is running down like that and running across like that, and if there's any excess you can trim that off. Now these have turned out pretty good, so there isn't really any excess. Look, tiny little scrappy bits. It's just a little bit of dog ear. Okay, but you just want to double check that, and you can do that the same as that. Sorry, you can do the same on your 4 patches as well, because these should be 4.5 inches as well. So half 4.5, this little centerpiece here, half of 4.5 is 2.25. So I'd find my 2.25 line and my 2.25 line, find out where they meet, which is just there, and pop that right in the center like that. Okay. And you can see there's just a tiny little widgy bit to trim off. I mean, minuscule amounts, but sometimes it's worth doing it. It gives you a much more, you know, much neater finish if you just take the time to do these little extra elements like that. Okay, gonna get rid of that bit there. So we can start now putting this together. So I'm just going to clear the decks a little bit and get rid of anything we don't need, so I can lie this out and I can show you some of the, get my cup of tea out of the way as well, and I can show you how you can put these elements together. All right, now if you want to do this lovely lattice look here, you're going to make another little sets of 4. Okay, so you're going to make sets of 4 with 2 of these and 2 of these. Again, don't overthink the colours with this, just go for it. All right, so you would start by, I'm going to put a 4 patch. Now this is towards you guys, okay? I'll try and do this towards you upside down. So you're going to put a 4 patch in the top left, and you're going to put one of these little altered squares next to it. And you're going to, so this is my center point basically. So you want the background fabric to be touching the center point. And then I'm going to reverse that. So I'm going to put one like that. So again, my background fabric is pointing into the center. And then I want a little 4 patch down here. Okay. We're going to do that 4 times. All right. So I would pile them up like this. Try not to think too much. So that's 3. Oh, 3. And that's number 4. There we go. I'm going to have that bright red one actually, just because that caught my eye. These will go into the next block. Right. And then I would lie these on top again. So again, so I know that they're all going the same way. Like that. So I've got my background fabric pointing into the center. Okay, if you decide, just before I start stitching these together, if you decide to put your accent fabric into the center like that, you will get a very slightly different look again. Okay, I would suggest having a go at the blocks with the background first, and then once you've kind of got your head around it, then that's when you can start playing around. That's when you can start really having, having some fun with it. You can have the accent to the center. You can do them like this, okay? And you get all sorts of crazy lines and designs going on there. You get these lovely secondary patterns and things. But for now, we're going to stick with the simple one, okay? So we're going to sew these together. I'm going to sew this one to this one, and then I'm going to sew this one to this one. We're going to make 4 little mini blocks. So I want to stitch this one down like that along that edge, and then I'm going to stitch that one down along that edge, and we're going to do that on all of them. So back to the sewing machine, pop your 1/4 inch back on. Okay, so we're going to put my 1/4 inch back on. Ooh. There we go. Get it right the first time. Let's get that starch savvy out the way. And off we go again. And I'm going to very quickly just whip down these, okay? So how are we doing on time? Drew's my cameraman today. So just checking that I'm not overrunning too much, but I think we're okay for time at the moment. So there we go. Drew's done a lot of the lives, because we've done quite a few lives now for the craft shows. The 7 PM ones, you might have watched them, and Drew, bless him, has done all my filming for me. He's also done all the filming on my 1 o'clocks as well, because we do a 1 o'clock live on our own Facebook page. And so yeah, I think there's about 130 of them. We did them every day through lockdown, and now the shop's back reopen. It's not every day, it's Monday to Thursday. We do a 1 o'clock live on there as well. So if you're enjoying the sewing tips and enjoying it, you can always join us on there as well. So there we go. So that's that little lot. Let's just do these other ones, and we're nearly there. You can start to see the blocks come together. Okay, so down this side. Ooh, didn't want to catch that one. There we go, down there, like that. 2 more to do, and then we're going to press these out, and we're going to do that same little 4. We're going to put them together just like the original 4 patch that we did, and you can do the same little trick if you want to on the back. You know, where you open that little seam up. Again, it will help with the bulk. And last one. So like I said, there's no complicated sewing with this at all. It is really simple to do. It's all about the cutting. And if you're worried about the cutting, if you are new to quilting, or you know, if maybe you've got some problems with your hands, or you struggle with cutting, pre-cuts are brilliant for this. Those little mini charm packs that are 2.5-inch squares, brilliant for this. You know, because it's all the cutting's done for you. You'll buy 2 or 3 of those, mix them all up, and do it that way. Okay, so just snipping these apart. You know, or you could buy a charm pack and cut those down. If you cut that in, because they're 5-inch squares, if you cut that down twice through the centre, you've got lots and lots of 2.5-inch squares as well then. So, you know, it doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't have to be scrappy. Now I want to iron it towards the altered square. I'm going to iron them towards the altered square. It will make your life a little bit easier, because again, you've got less bulk, less seams. So just quickly set my seam, and off I go. Sorry, very boring little bit, guys. Just lots and lots of ironing on this bit. I'm trying to do it as quickly as I can for you, so we can get to the putting the block together. And there we go. Nearly there, a couple more to do. So what have you guys all been sewing during lockdown? What have you, I mean, I know it's kind of getting back to normal a weeny bit, isn't it? And shows are starting to happen and shops are reopening. But, oh, I've gone way round on that one. What have you been sewing? Did you do a lot of crafting? Did you do a lot of, you know, paper craft? Did you make cards and things? Did you get your Christmas cards done if you're a paper crafter? You know, did you use your time for a little bit of crafting? Okay, so here we go. Now, how you join these together now is up to you. So you can absolutely, sorry, I lied. We're going to join them together this way. How we join the next bit together is up to you. So we're now going to join those together just like that. So that is coming, that's facing you guys again. So I've got this one back up in my top left, top right, bottom right. They're facing inwards like that. My seams are now facing opposite ways. Okay, so we're going to nest them together. We're going to flip it over, nest that seam, kind of wiggle it in your fingers so you can feel it sort of click in together. I always pop a pin there, and now we're going to stitch down that long root, that long edge. Okay, same on this one. So this is your top left, bottom right, flip them over so that I can nest that edge. Ooh, yeah, right, if I can find a pin. My pins are a bit blunt at the moment. Need a little bit more. Need to get some new pins, I think. So top left, bottom right, like that, and flip, and I can just pin into there. There we go. And again with the last one, like that. Okay, and flip that over, so I've got that little point there. Make sure that's all nice and tucked in. And now we're just going to whiz down that long edge on all of them. So back over to the sewing machine. And again, I'm going to chain piece again. But you can see how quickly, I mean, we're going with this really, really quickly. A quilt will come together. You will take more time cutting than you will actually take sewing, right? So we're going to go all the way down on these ones. It's incredibly simple sewing. You know, it's one of those, it's quite a mindful thing, this type of sewing, I find anyway, because kind of, will switch off, but you can allow your brain to relax a little bit when it's sewing like this. Well, I hope you're finding it all simple. I hope you're not all going, phew, don't know what she's talking about. There we go. So we're nearly there now. We're nearly at the very end, and you've made a whole block. So just whip down there like this. Okay, and then we're gonna quickly take these pins out. There we go, like that and that. Because I'm terrible for leaving pins in. And again, we're gonna just iron that out just like we did last time. You could absolutely do that little trick on the back if you want to. I'm not going to do it now just because for time restraints and everything, but you could absolutely do that little trick where you take those little stitches out. Okay. Ooh, managed to make a mess of that one. There we go. And again. So we've now got 4/4 of our block. They're all exactly the same. You can see they're all going exactly the same way, like that. So how we get to this lovely lattice is by rotating them. So if I start in the top left up here, okay, the next one, you're just going to turn like that, okay, and then the next one, you're going to turn again like that, and then the last one, you're going to turn like that, okay. So we would then stitch these together. So we'd stitch this to this, this to this, 2 pairs, and then put the 2 pairs together, okay? And you get this lovely sort of lattice effect. And when you then put the extra blocks together, so this comes out as a 16.5-inch block when it's at this point. When you put those blocks together, so you can see it there, let me see, there we go. So this one here is a block like that. When you put them together, you end up with these lovely crosses coming through as a secondary pattern as you put the blocks together, okay? You don't have to do that lovely diamond shape, that lattice shape. You could put them all together like this, okay? So you could turn them and put them together like this, and you would end up with like chevrons behind, so they would all be going the same way. You'd get these lovely like arrow shapes going along the side of your quilt, okay? You could, like I was saying earlier, when if you flipped those accents, you'd end up with chevrons going one way, chevrons going the other way as well, and it works like you almost get like opposite zigzags. So this is something, if you're slightly more experienced, brilliant for a beginner, just nice and simple. But if you are that little bit more experienced, you can absolutely play around with stuff, okay? So this one, like I said, would go together like that. We would just stitch those 2 and those 2, and there's your block. You would make as many blocks as you want. I've done 6, and this is like just a nice little lap quilt size, but you could go, I would probably do 9 for a lap quilt because I like something I can really tuck around me. So I would do another 3 to do 9. But you could do this with, for a bed, you know, for a bed quilt or something. You could just keep making blocks until it's big enough. I'd probably, you know, for a single bed, you'd probably need about 20, 24 blocks, something like that. You know, maybe 25 by 4 would be enough for a single bed. The nice thing about this is that you could do one of these blocks after you've finished another project. So cut lots of 2.5-inch squares, and every time you finish a project, cut some 2.5-inch squares and put them in a box. And once you've got enough squares, just make one block. It could be like an ongoing project that you just make a block now and then out of all the scraps from your previous projects. So that's how you do it with an accent fabric. I've also done one little block here where I didn't use an accent fabric. I just used all scraps. So you can see here that instead of like that cobalt blue on the background, I used more scraps. I used more 2.5-inch squares. So rather than so I've got my 4 patch, and then I used little 2.5-inch squares on these, and it gives a really scrappy look on this one. You don't get as strong a lattice line through it, but it definitely gives you that sort of idea of a real scrappy thing. Or like the pink one I showed you earlier, you could use all the same colour range and do that instead. So I really hope you've enjoyed the demo. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and I will answer all your questions and comments. Yeah, please do shout if you've got any questions. And yeah, it's back to Debbie. Thank you very much. Bye.